Before the seed is planted, the earth must be awakened. In the land where the great lake breathes and the red soil holds the memory of 10,000 seasons, the Luo people understood something that the modern world has almost forgotten: that everything in life is connected: the body, the soil, the spirit, the rain. Welcome to Echoes of the Luos, and today we step into a tradition that was never spoken of lightly, one that was held sacred in whispers, practiced behind closed doors, and understood only by those who had walked far enough in this life to know that the harvest begins long before the seed ever touches the ground. Today we celebrate the ancient Luo practice of the sacred union, the ritual intimacy between a man and his first wife on the eve of the planting season. A tradition as old as the soil itself. A tradition most of the world never knew existed. A tradition so rich, so layered with meaning, that once you understand it, you will never look at the Luo people the same way again. To understand this practice, you must first understand who the Luo people are again. The Luo are a Nilotic people, proud, deeply spiritual, and rooted in a worldview where the seen and the unseen are never separated. They migrated southward from the Nile Valley, settling along the shores of Namlolwe, what the world now calls Lake Victoria, centuries before any map was drawn of this land. They brought with them rich oral traditions, complex social structures, and a reverence for the cycles of nature so deep it ran in the blood. In Luo cosmology, nothing happened by accident. The movement of the moon, the direction of the wind, the behavior of birds at sunrise, all of it spoke, all of it meant something. Agriculture was not merely survival for the Luo. It was covenant. The earth was living entity, a mother who demanded to be honored before she would give. And just as a man will not go to war without the blessings of his ancestors, he will not drive a plow into the earth without first aligning himself, body, spirit, and household with the forces of life. This is where the ritual was born. Elders across Luo communities in Siaya, Isumu, Homa Bay, Migori have spoken in careful and reverent voices of a custom observed before the long rains came, before the first seed were committed to the soil, before the children were sent to the fields with their small hands and eager hearts. On the eve of the planting season, a man would return to his first wife, his wife of the house, his anchor in this world. And that night, that one sacred night, would carry more weight than any other night of the farming year. The Luo believed that the earth was feminine. She had moods, she had cycles, she breathed, she responded to the people who walked upon her. And the elders taught something beautiful, that the energy of the household, the love between a husband and a wife, the unity within a home, all of that energy did not stay inside four walls. It moved outward. It entered the soil. It shaped what grew there. Just as a woman carries life within her body, the earth too carried the seed that would feed the community. And the Luo saw these two things not as separate, but as the same miracle wearing different faces. So before a man planted his seeds into the ground, he first renewed his covenant with the woman who was the living earth of his household, his Mikayi. The night before the planting season was treated with extraordinary care. Certain foods were prepared, specific meals that the elders knew. Sometimes herbs were involved, known only to the medicine people of the community. The wife would bathe and prepare herself with intention. The husband will set aside alcohol, set aside the noise of the world, and come home. In some accounts, prayers were spoken to the ancestors before the night began. Gratitude for the seasons already past. Petitions for the season ahead. The spirits of the homestead were invited to witness. And in that union, that sacred, private, deeply human union, something invisible was released. The Luo called such a force by different names depending on the clan, but the understanding was shared across all of them. The energy of that night will travel with the man into the field the following morning. At first light, before the children woke, before the neighbors stirred, the man would walk into his field alone. He will be the first to break the soil of that season, the first to nail and press seed into the ground. And it was believed, understood as fact, that his hands on that morning carried a blessing that no medicine man, no prayer alone could replicate. Because the blessing had come from unity, from love, from the renewed covenant between a man and the woman the ancestors had placed at the center of his world. And the seeds planted with such hands did not fail. This was not a secret kept by one family. Across Luo communities, the understanding was shared, though never broadcast loudly. It lived in the quiet instructions a mother gave her son before he married, in the gentle reminders an elder uncle offered before the March rains, in the knowing nod between old men who had lived enough season to understand that the visible world is shaped by what happens in the invincible one. Entire communities moved in rhythm with this understanding, and the rhythm worked. The harvests came, the families ate, the seasons turned. There are things our grandparents knew that we have not yet found words for. There are wisdom so old, so woven into the fabric of daily life, that they were never written in books, because they did not need to be. They were written in the seasons, in the harvest, and in the health of the children and the long lives of elders who had lived by principles the modern world is only now beginning to whisper about. The Luo, in their wisdom, understood that a man and his household are not separate from the land they tend, that the love within a marriage, the unity, the warmth, the living covenant between two people does not stay in the bedroom. It breathes outside, it touches everything. And so they built a ritual around this truth. They gave it a time and a place in the calendar. They honored it. They protected it. They passed it carefully from one generation to the next. This is what it meant to be Luo. Not just a language, not just a geography, but a way of being alive that recognized the sacred in the everyday, that says the divine not only in the sky, but in the soil, in the seed, in the hands of a husband and wife, joined in the darkness before the rains come. I want you to sit with this for a moment. In a world that has spent so much energy telling African people that their traditions were primitive, that the ways of their grandparents were something to be ashamed of and abandoned, here sits a practice of extraordinary depth, a practice that understood the connection between love and land, between intimacy and harvest, between the health of a marriage and the health of a community, between what happens inside a home at night and what grows in the field at dawn. The Luo knew this, they lived this, and for generations upon generations, it worked. We carry this story today not as something of the past, but as a mirror, a reminder that our ancestors were not stumbling in the dark. They were walking in the light we have since turned away from. And perhaps it is not too late to turn back. To remember that a home is sacred, that a marriage is a covenant with forces larger than two people, that the earth listens, that the harvest remembers. This has been Echoes of the Luos. If this story reached something deep inside you, something you did not know was waiting to be found, then share it. Pass it forward the way the elders once passed the truths around the fire. Because this is how a culture survives. Not in museums, not in textbooks, but in voices, in stories, in people who refuse to let the fire go out. Until next time, erokamano ainya.